Hey there, everyone. How's it going? It's time for another 25 minutes of listening to Miguel talk. How's everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. Um, I wanted to talk today about something that I found interesting. Now, I'm reading this book on Kindle called uh, The Hungry Brain, right? It's by Stephen Guyenet. The Hungry Brain, outsmarting the instincts that make us overeat. And, I talk a lot about that. And I've just been interested in the psychology and the biology of overweightness and managing emotions and managing health and things like that. And so, um, one interesting idea. By the way, I want to highly recommend this book. This book is really fantastic. I've enjoyed reading it over the last few days, and I'm not quite done. I'm probably maybe halfway through it right now, and I am thoroughly enjoying the material. He's really got an engaging writing style. Well, I guess for me, writing style is secondary to the information. The information is fantastic. I'm really enjoying all of the ideas and the metaphors and the language of it all. Not that it's poetry, but I'm not reading it for poetry. There's a lot of content in this book, and I'm really appreciating it. And but this book got me to think something. There was that study, and oh my gosh, I wish I could remember it. It has to do with, remember that marshmallow self control experiment done on children a long time ago, and it related to the theme of the study had to do with that kids with higher levels of self control had better outcomes, 5-10 years later, right? And at least that was sort of like the learning. But and I'm not really going to talk about that at all, but I'm going to talk about an idea related to that, and it has to do with the future self. And how do you like my red glasses, by the way? Pretty cool, huh? I've graduated from a magnification 1.25 times to 2.0 times. Anyway, my eyes have gotten a little bit worse over the last year or so. Okay, so let me return to this idea about the future self. Now, I appreciate the future self. I have some kind of idea about the future self for me, and I often consider my future self, but I don't think that I consider it quite often enough or quite strongly enough. Now, of course, I do consider it every once in a while, because I believe that I happen to have very strong self control. But I have a feeling that my self control uh, attitudes and techniques, and basically my mastery, my relative mastery of self control, I think, and my pride is certainly about relating to self control, has more to do with present moment self control and less to do with self control because, sort of defining a why, because it would benefit my future self. So I think I want to make a distinction between at least those two types of self control that I'm realizing. That I tend to be a self control person because I like to be in control in the present moment. And I do have a part of my self control, how I use it. It is related to how I'm going to be in the future and how I want the future to be. Maybe I want to save money in the present so that my future self will be a lot more wealthy. Or I want to watch what I eat today so that my future self will be a lot more healthy. Um, or even I'd like to read a lot more books today so that my future self will be more wise and intelligent. So, but what I'm noticing is that my considerations have very little to do with my future self. Even despite me having a lot of self control, it's about control of my behavior in the present moment quite often. Why? How am I realizing this? Well, this book talked about um, sort talked about self control and obesity in that sense about how well, actually, the author referred to a study uh, done that suggested that people who had episodic visions of their future while they were eating or just before they were eating did ate less food, and at least in one clinical study. And I know I'm really overgeneralizing. I have not even read the clinical study, but this idea makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm really liking it. I'm really liking the idea. And sometimes, this whole idea of my future self, I mean, I've always had it, right? That I want the future to be better than it is today, or, I've always utilized it in a lot of ways. But this book, I just, for some reason, I am in a state where I'm just more accepting and more open to receiving information about how to improve my levels of self-control when in my eating behavior and my eating patterns. And I'm just totally open to this idea of thinking about my future self while I'm eating. And it's kind of funny. I never really I sat down to eat the other day, or actually even earlier today, and my future self, it does not run across my mind consciously. In fact, I think quite often what happens for me typically is that I just come up with a set of values. I like to eat healthy, I'd like to eat moderately. And those values I come up with, and I do come up with sort of looking toward the future and what I'd like in 5, 10 years. But once I've established the sort of the ground rules, then it's all about me meeting the rules in the present moment, right? I'm not really considering the future. I only consider the future when I'm coming up with the rules in the first place, when I'm coming up with the values, when I'm figuring out the why. And then I'm sort of discarding the future, my future self. And I'm thinking more about, okay, let's double down on making sure that my self-control is strong in this area in the present moment, which is fine. Actually, that technique works very well. But I've been really gaining some serious traction on regulating my behavior by explicitly thinking about my future self when I've got a fork in or a spoon in my hand. And it's really it's very interesting how it changes my perspective. I'm becoming a lot more thoughtful. And I think it's really going to help me. This whole idea of my future self, I think it's going to really help me when it comes to spending money. Here's the thing, one thing I've noticed about me is that quite often when I'm happy, I tend to spend more money. Like I tend to be more, naturally, I think I'm more generous if I'm happy. I spend more money on food. I spend more money on everything. And when I'm happy and feeling good, I don't know. I'm carefree, right? And I don't think I'm saying anything unusual or anything that other people don't do. But I definitely am a little more spendy when I'm feeling happy. And I have a feeling that I probably even eat more when I'm feeling happy. Like I'm less concerned about the future, right? Because I'm just doing great right now. But I'll tell you, when I think about my future me, like my future be 6 months from now, 3 months from now, or a year from now, or 5, 10 years from now, I feel like there's this I actually feel a very strong repulsion to spending money and eating more than my body needs. I, it's actually kind of startling. It's startling how like the self control that I'm developing, generating when I think about my future self. Now I don't know if this is temporary or this is gonna last. Who knows? It may not last. But just in my mind internally, I've got this sense like, wow, I've got goals, right? Like one of the goals, I don't know if it makes any sense, but I'd like to have a six pack, of abs, right? A six pack abs. Now, that's not the hardest thing to do because we all have abs, right? We just need to, abs are made in the kitchen, and really, all I have to do is just eat a little bit more moderately, right? Sort of use a little more moderation. Um, it's not like I need a whole lot of moderation, but just a little bit more moderation, and I can get to where I want to go from an abdominal standpoint, right? And but let me tell you, I don't know. There's something that is really compelling about thinking about my future self, and I think I'm familiar with these the people who are doing this, trying to save money using the FIRE strategy. I don't know. I think it's called FIRE as an acronym for financial independence, retire early, something like that. I'm not. I think I considered doing that, and I'm sure everyone has an interest in eventually becoming financially independent and retiring early, perhaps. But personally, I've not really given it a lot of consideration myself, other than just being generally interested in the techniques that they're using. But the, but lately, as I've been considering my future self, like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm really feeling like I clamp down on my spending, and I just wanted to report that all it really took was a shift in perspective. Like I, it's kind of funny. So recently, in the recent past, I spend money and I eat more food when I'm feeling happy in the present moment. And recently, I'm still feeling happy and I'm thinking about my future self, the future Miguel 5 years from now. I want the future Miguel to be happy and to have wealth. And let me tell you, it's really having an effect. I'm definitely sort of, I don't want to use the word clamping down, but I'm using more restraint than maybe I would have otherwise. And it's kind of interesting. I didn't really expect how profound an effect thinking about my future self would be. So, so this is what I've been doing. All I do is, like, when I sit down at the table, what I've done is I've just sort of, in my mind, just imaged myself a year from now. Or maybe really just imaged myself on the beach this summer, which is only like 2 or 3 months away. Well, maybe 5 months away, or yeah. So it's not that far from now. Of course, 5 months is a long, long time. Certainly from a weight, I don't need to lose that much weight. Maybe I could lose 5 pounds, right? So it's not. It's maybe 7 pounds, right? By this summer. So I mean, I could easily do that. Heck, I could, if I tried, I could do that in a week or 2 weeks. If I tried, I could do it. Um, but I'll tell you, it's having an effect. So my technique is simply just to envision myself this summer at the beach, and I'll tell you, it has an immediate effect on the food that I'm eating. All of a sudden, I'm just like super conscious of like, oh, is this breakfast too big for me right now? So I'm thinking about portion control already. It was just a small shift in my thinking, and And I'm also thinking, like, if I imagine myself a year from now or 5 years from now, I can imagine myself as like a 55-year-old or a 65-year-old person. I'm thinking, well, how much wealth would I want to have at that age? And I'm thinking, I don't really need to spend the money. I think that those thoughts so readily, even when I'm happy. And so it's bizarre. And all it takes is just a moment, a moment about thinking about my future self. And all I do is I image me, like the figure of my body, and I project it, like, what might I be doing in a year or this summer? What would be realistic for me to be doing? And how do I want to feel? How much money do I want in my bank account? Um, who do I want to be talking to? Things like this. It's a really simple exercise, really simple practice. I just think about me. So in fact, I was having fun with the idea. I had this spoon that I was eating like a bowl of oatmeal with or cereal. And I just imagined for a moment looking at myself in the reflection of the spoon and thinking of and imagining that was my future self. I know it's probably TMI, but I'm really giving it a part of. Let me tell you what's going on here. There's another layer to this, and that is I want to learn how visualization can help me achieve my goals faster. Um, and I think a lot of personal trainers and a lot of sports enthusiasts, sports trainers, and business gurus, and self-help gurus talk about visualization all the time. And that's something I've always had an interest in, manipulating the ideas in my mind and you know um, self-control in that arena, right? A cognitive self-control. And so this idea of visualization seems like a no-brainer, and I figured, let's use visualization a little bit more often, and maybe I can use visualization to help me figure out how much food to eat and help me figure out how much money to spend, maybe even figure out how much time to use on certain tasks, right? So I'm wondering, there might even be certain things like, oh, here's an idea about how to use visualization. How about I use visualization as it relates to generating internal happiness? Now, imagine, here I'm just formulating this as we speak because I am intrigued about how visualization can help me. And now I'm thinking about visualizing my future self. So, if I want my future self to be happy, say this summer, what can I do now in the moment to make that more likely that I can be super happy this summer? Well, I can think of a few things that I could possibly do. Like, I could go dancing more often. That would make me happier because, being freer in one's body, a little more expressive that way, that'd be great. Another thing I could do to be happier would be, expression is a great way to make people happy, to help people become happier. So maybe I could, practice speaking an hour at a time instead of 25 minutes at a time. I know that I'm happy when I'm expressing myself and that I'm doing it well, right? In fact, I'm very happy when I'm expressing myself and doing it well, doing it competently. Now, I want you to know that I'm using a lot of gestures when I speak, and I'm very aware of it. But here's the thing, I don't care. For me, it's fun. When I was growing up, I was part of this speakers program, and there was a lot of, I received a lot of counsel about gestures and making sure that I did them right. And I think I'm just playing with my younger self. Um, Let me tell you, throwing my arms around is a lot of fun. It's like dancing for the arms. But I think it's also quite distracting for an audience. But since I'm actually not really caring about who my audience is, maybe I don't care. So, anyway, it gives me pleasure. So, you're just going to have to live with the active hands, at least for now. And when I start caring about what my audience thinks, well, then I'll probably tone it down a little bit with the gestures. But I just want you to know that I'm having fun. So, so that's actually a really intriguing idea. Like, how can I use this visualization of my future self to make myself happier, help increase my wealth, and help increase my physical fitness? I think there's a lot of untapped potential here, and I want to really start using it. I want to start visualizing myself 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months into the future, a year in the future, 5 years into the future. Start getting on track and creating some goals and following through with them. And I think thinking of these images of me in the future, like realistic images, can really help me figure out what to do. Speaking of figuring out what to do, let me tell you about a conundrum that I have. It's not a really unusual conundrum, but of course it's related to physical fitness. But my conundrum has to do with, on the one hand, I want to gain weight because I want to be strong and energetic. But at the same time, I want to lose weight because I want to be lean and muscular, right? So this lean and muscular, it's quite a dichotomy. On the one hand, I know it's important for me to eat sufficient amounts of food, particularly protein, right? And carbohydrates. And on the other hand, I'm also keenly aware that if I reduce the amount of calories I eat, I get to lose fat. So it's interesting how building muscle and losing fat are sort of at loggerheads a little bit. Honestly, I don't know quite the solution to it. It's probably just as easy as eating a fairly high, moderate protein diet with, fewer calories. I think it might just be as simple as that. Anyway, I've had this idea lately that, what I've been noticing lately is that I've been enjoying my leg workouts, but sometimes they create muscle soreness in my legs. And I was contemplating today getting some glutamate, or glutamine, right? L-glutamine, which is an amino acid. It's present in all proteins, so it's not required. It's just like conditionally. I don't know. Here's the thing. I also don't want to eat a lot of supplements. I'm really not a supplement guy. Fact is, I'm not. I'm kind of lazy when it comes to supplements, and I end up taking them, taking them. So, anyway, I think I'm gonna rely mostly on diet. And anyway, let's see what else. What else is going on with me? So, I want to talk to you about apples, which I love, by the way. I love apples. But I've been getting I've been using Instacart lately, and unfortunately, the grocery pickers have not been picking up the kind of apples that I want. I think I might have to let the shoppers know that I'm looking for a specific kind of apple, or maybe just always get Granny Smith apples, because the green apples are easy to get, and green apples, actually, the Granny Smiths are reliably good and crunchy. So maybe that's what I'll do. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well these days, and I'll talk to you later. I'm gonna go to the kitchen and see what I can do to drink some water, because I think my future self would want me to drink a lot of water. And a lot of water without artificial sweeteners or anything like that, but just plain water. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.